Hey everybody, welcome to Author Talk. I'm Sarah Donovan, and we are here talking with the authors that have contributed so generously to Just YA. This is a paperback anthology, but it is available as open access on the OK State Open Education Resource, and you can download it for free and download as many copies as you wish. So we are here today with Mary Cronin. And Mary, will you introduce yourself and tell us where you are in the world?
Sure. I'm Mary Cronin. I live in Massachusetts on Cape Cod, so all the way out in the ocean, pretty much. And I'm a poet, an author, and I'm also a longtime educator. I've been teaching for over 30 years, everything from preschool to college.
What are you teaching now?
Right now, I'm a literacy coach in a K to 3 school, which is pretty much my sweet spot. So I guide newer teachers in their reading and writing curriculum, and then I help them in their classrooms when they're trying to figure out their curriculum and how to work with certain reading groups or writing activities. So it allows me to be with kids and also guide the adults in the building, which I really love.
Well, tell me, so you have your teacher part. How about the writer part? Have you always been a writer?
I would say I've always been a writer, and it means it's a huge part of my identity. I do work full time and I have a lot of writing projects going on. So I'm one of those crazy people that wakes up at 5 a.m. every morning to do my writing before I leave for school. Um, and I take great pride in my family history. I come from an Irish American family. My grandparents on one side and great grandparents on the other immigrated, found their way to New York to create a new life here. And I'm always grateful to them because it allows me to do, because of what they did and their courage, it allows me to do what I do. And I tried to pay tribute to that in a way in the poem that I contributed to Just YA. And I have to say, as an educator, I'm very proud to be a part of this, and I love that it's available to educators no matter where they are, and no matter what their budget is or isn't, that they can download it and use it with their students.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mary. Um, should we read your poem, or do you want to talk a little bit about your poem first before you read it?
I'll talk a little bit about it first. I This was a new venture for me in a lot of ways. I've written a lot of poetry, but I've never written this form, and I think the form is really fun and would be exceptionally fun to work with in a middle school or high school or even college classroom. Um, and it was also new for me because I was trying to write in the voice of a teen who is a member of a family and questioning some of the narratives that are told in the family and questioning some of the ways that the family sort of packages themselves. And I tried to strike a tone that wasn't too surly or rebellious, but at the same time was maybe trying to poke holes in some of the stories they've been told for a really long time.
Yeah.
So it's called Family Stories. That's the title. And it's inspired by a poem by Emma Lazarus, which I'll talk about at the end.
Okay.
You keep telling me these old family stories. Give me a break. They can't all be saints. Don't tell me everyone had perfect immigration papers in your family tree. This noble narrative, it's tired. Are you really sure that your relatives were so perfect? They were poor, yes, and scrappy. Maybe they had no papers, your ancestors. Now you all watch the news, huddled together, saying that outsiders are coming in masses. You talk about the old days with a yearning. But who knows if your people, our family, came to this country the right way? They just want to breathe, these newcomers, like us. They just want to be free. I wrote this poem because it captures the way that I'm feeling right now about debate about immigration in America
Mhm.
because I'm very proud of my immigrant ancestors and family members. And I also work in a school with a really large percentage of immigrant families and young children. And I always think about the stories they carry and the courage they have to move into a new country and a new culture and in many cases, a new language.
Yeah.
So in this poem, it's called The Golden Shovel, and it's a poetic form. It says right there where each word of one line from another poem serves as the end word of each line of the newly constructed poem. So I used those words that are by Emma Lazarus on the base of the Statue of Liberty. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free.
So everybody can download it for free, but it's the last word on each line is a line from the poem. So that's the golden shovel form there.
Yes. And think about how fun that would be for students to choose a line of a poem that they really feel drawn to, and then create a whole new work that's sort of weaving those words into the end of their lines. It was really challenging and fun to write this poem.
Yeah, a couple things stuck out to me, a number of things. My grandfather came from Cololi, Italy in 1921 as a teenager, not speaking any English, uh, and landed in Chicago.
Mm,
So we have lots of stories from which a lot of narratives we don't know
right.
firsthand. I never actually got to meet him. And then so there's this story of our own family, our own heritage that invites us to do a little inquiry into the what's true and how do we know what's true and the stories that we tell. And then of
Mm,
course the second part is, you know, having this very specific thread from Emma Lazarus, like that's a clear story that we tell as the United States about what we're willing to do for people who need a place to come, who are
yeah,
tired or in a safe place to harbor, right?
yes.
And then there's this other side, this other that's not maybe not so centered on immigration, but this voice that you've captured here um, that gives permission for a youth to kind of talk back with sass and with attitude and with very correct and valid questions. And in the poem, it's kind of safe to do that. It's not always safe for us to do that to our elders or our parents or
Exactly.
right? Like we don't
Yes.
know, we don't want to disrespect them, but we also, in some situations, parents could be even aggressive toward, kids. And like these aren't things that we can say and not
Mhm,
cause further conflict, but
mhm,
there's power in uttering them, on
yes,
this poem in this page. And I think
mhm,
the format of saying, choose someone that you really want to call out.
mhm,
But you
mhm,
can't, or it's
mhm,
not safe to do that. Let's do that
mhm,
in the poem. What do you
mhm.
want to say to
Yes,
them? And this
yes,
direct address, you keep telling these family stories. That's a great line. You keep doing this, whether it's a
yes,
family member or even a friend or someone that they just don't feel safe
yes.
confessing.
Mhm.
So many wonderful things here, Mary.
Thank you. I like that it encourages and supports skepticism
Mm,
because we get fed a lot of stories. And especially as young people, I think it's important to maintain your critical thinking about what stories you choose to accept and believe.
yeah,
Hmm.
yes. And that we want that skepticism, healthy skepticism. I
Yes.
think we want to nurture that in our students too. And I think this is difficult for teachers sometimes. We we want to engage our students. We want them to be good and
Yeah.
compliant, to do the things we ask them to do.
Right.
Um, but it's not easy as a teacher to invite, criticality and skepticism and hold space for the questions.
Yes.
Especially as teachers, we always want to have the answers or we always want to tie something off in a neat bow, but it's kind of hard to send students out when there
Mm,
are no neat and narrow and concrete answers to things. And I think that's where
mhm.
we are in our world right now. Like
Right.
I find myself not knowing what to say to the students and not knowing what to say to my colleagues. And um, I don't have like a simple statement that's gonna make everyone feel better or change things.
Mhm.
And I'm skeptical about all of that. But I think writing through that might be a really healthy approach to not knowing what to do with the feelings right now, you know.
I think so too. I think so too.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm so glad that it's in the collection, Mary.
Thank you.
Well,
Because
tell us
we always have to encourage our students to question. And I think one of the things I didn't learn until I was much later in life is, well, who's telling this story or writing this book or writing this article and why? And what's their position? What's their platform? And that helps me then to understand, okay, now I can understand this person's perspective, or I don't agree with this part and I do agree with this part, or I'm going to have to learn more about that from somewhere else. So I was raised in a different era where, the books you received in school or the article that you read in the paper, you just sort of took that unquestioningly. And I think things are changing now, and I think that's good.
Mhm. Well, I'm glad that we're doing this interview too, because I think, there's the poems and the writing in here can stand on its own. You don't need to know everything about the author. You can make sense of it for yourself. Um,
Mhm.
but there is something to say, okay, let's take that reading and then let's take another one and find out a little bit about the story behind the poem and where it comes from and how it changes meaning. Both are valid. Both meaning making experiences are valid. Um,
Yes.
but it does come, especially we're writing sort of autobiographical poetry. Most of it in here feels is very autobiographical. Some are
Yes.
fictionalized. But knowing
Mhm.
that and knowing a little bit about your family background sheds some
Mhm.
light onto
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
its meaning.
And I read an interesting analogy the other day. Someone was talking about, people who are descended from immigrants who no longer welcome new immigrants.
Mhm.
And how long are you in this country or your family's in this country before you decide you don't really want to welcome any more newcomers? And they used the analogy of the treehouse. And they said it's almost like some people get up into the treehouse and they've lived there for a while, so they decide to pull up the ladder and no one else can come in. And I thought that was really a great description. And it really, that's one of the reasons I wrote this poem, is because although my family has been here for a couple of generations, I'm never going to forget where my family came from and that they were welcomed.
Mhm.
And I believe in doing that for new people who are coming into our country.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Mary, I feel like you have a picture book in that tree house metaphor waiting to be written.
I might get to that.
Among all your, well, tell us about some of the things that you are working on or that are coming out that we can celebrate and follow.
Well, I'm the daughter of a firefighter, of a New York City firefighter. So I do have a book coming out in 2026 that's about it's a poetry book about firefighting because there are so many kids who are fascinated by it and in love with it, called Trucks, Boots, and Bells. So I'm very excited about that. And then I also have in 2027 a biography coming out for kids, about Jean Manford, who's a woman who stood up and defended her gay son way back in the 1970s when people were not very out and were not very brave about sticking up for people who were getting bullied. And she created an organization for parents of LGBTQ kids and people, and that still exists today, called PFLAG. So it's the story of Jean and how she became this huge role model for so many people. And that book is called Like a Mother Bear, because that's how her daughter just described her, that she was like a mother bear. So those are some exciting things that are coming out that I'm really looking forward to.
Great. Okay, so I just am thinking about age groups. So
Mhm.
fire the firefighter
Yep.
book,
Yep.
what's the target grade level for that?
That's probably a K-3 book,
Okay.
K to 3, K-4. And then I would say the Jean Manford book, Like a Mother Bear, is probably like grades 2 to 5 or 6.
Okay.
And then I'm working on something now for middle school. So that's kind of in the works. So we'll
Nice.
see what happens with that.
A wide range of audiences.
Yeah, I do like to work all along the different age ranges.
Yeah, I love that. Well, as we close, is there anything that you'd like to say to teachers or the youth that read our book and your poem? Any final words?
I just want to applaud teachers who allow for open discussion and conversation among students within a safe space of a classroom, where there's a teacher to guide but not control, and kids have the ability to question and wonder and create. I just say bravo to teachers who are able to create that kind of learning environment because I think that's how we grow just really creative, engaged people who will do really well in our world.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.